Hey guys, so today we're going to continue our work with ratios and rates, and today we're going to specifically focus on complex unit rates. So yesterday you learned about unit rates and what that looks like and how we are finding the amount for one, right? So our denominator being one. Well, today we are going to take that a little bit further and we're going to look at complex unit rates. And remember, with complex ratios, that means, or a complex rate means it contains at least one fraction. We want to remember fractions are just another way to represent division problems. So that fraction bar actually means division. It means we divide. So these are going to be the steps to solve or simplify complex unit rates, or again, rates with fractions. First, we're going to set it up in fraction form. So set up our ratio in fraction form if it's not already done so for us. And we want to remember whatever we are turning into a 1, right, our 1 goes on the bottom. So whichever unit we want to figure out for 1 goes on the bottom. And then when we're doing that, we want to look for some keywords. Words like we said yesterday, like per, or each, or over. Those are words that are going to tell us which unit is going to go on the bottom. Okay, so then once we set up our ratio as a fraction, our rate is in fraction form, and we figure out which one goes on the bottom, then we are going to divide by the bottom number. Then your answer is the entire fraction, the top and bottom, including the 1. Because remember, when we're talking about a unit rate, we want to know the amount for 1. So in this case, mixed numbers are actually okay for our final answer. I know usually when we're writing a ratio, we don't want to have mixed numbers, but since we're actually comparing that mixed number to 1, we are allowed to have mixed numbers in our final answer. And then last, we just want to make sure to remember to label our units throughout the problem. So we make sure that we know exactly what is going where, and we're keeping it straight and we're keeping it organized. Okay, so we're going to do some practice problems here, and we're going to set up these problems and make sure we're doing all of those things. We're going to follow all of our steps. So in this first problem, it says Shay runs 1/2 mile in 1/5 of an hour. How many miles per hour can she run? So the first thing we need to do is figure out which ratio is going on the top and which is going on the bottom. So we want to look for those keywords. And in this case, it tells us per hour, right? Which is telling us we have both miles and hours, but per hour is telling us that the hours are going to go on the bottom because per hour means for 1 hour. So our hours are going to be our 1. So to get things started, I'm going to start by just writing our units. So that means our miles are going on top and hour is going on bottom. So when we look in our problem, it says Shay runs 1/2 mile. So 1/2 is going to go on our top, and 1/5 of an hour. 1/5 is our hours, that's going to go on the bottom. So remember, we are going to divide. So I'm going to divide by 1/5. And remember that when we divide, we do keep, change, flip. So in this case, instead of doing 1/5 divided by 1/5, I'm going to write that as 1/5 times 5/1. Now, when I do this, this is going to cancel out and give me 1 on the bottom. But remember, whatever I do to the bottom, I'm also going to do to my top, so my numerator. So I'm going to multiply that by 5/1 as well. Since I'm just multiplying and I don't have any mixed numbers, I just multiply across. 1 times 5 is 5. 2 times 1 is 2. So I have 5/2 over 1. And remember, this is 5/2 miles over 1 hour. Okay, so now all we have left is to simplify. I want to change this improper fraction back to a mixed number. So I can just look at that and say, oh, how many times does 2 go into 5? This one's not too tricky, so it's not that hard. But if you're not sure, you can always just use division. So we can use our symbol. 2 goes into 5 2 times. 2 times 2 is 4, with a remainder of 1. So my 5/2 is actually 2 1/2 miles over 1 hour. So I can leave it like this, or I can write this as 2.5 miles per hour. So I can write it with the 1 like I did up here, or I can write it just 2.5 miles per hour because that means per 1 hour. And that is my answer. Okay, so let's take a look at the next one. Our next one says James fills a bucket 7/8 full using 2.5 gallons of water. How much water would it take to fill each bucket? Okay, so again, we want to look for those keywords to try to figure out which one is going to be on the bottom of our rate. So in this case, again, we want to look for per, each, over. So this time we have each bucket, okay? Each bucket means in one bucket. So since that's going to be our 1, we want to make sure that we put buckets on the bottom, and that means that gallons is going to go on the top. So I'm going to write this as gallons over buckets. Okay. Now I'm going to look for my numbers. I had 2.5 gallons. So that is going to be my number that goes on top. I'm just going to write that down here so I have more room. So again, 2.5 gallons, and I'm even just going to put a G, over 7/8 the bucket, so B. We've got gallons over buckets. Now, before I can divide, I do have a mixed number here, so I need to convert that. I need to change my 2 1/2 to an improper fraction. When I do that, I can do the little song, take the bottom times the whole plus the top. Or I know some of you in elementary also learned the check mark method. Whichever one works for you, we're doing the same process. So 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So this is actually 5/2 over 7/8. Okay. Now I want to divide. I need to divide by my bottom number. I'm actually going to write this back down here so I have a little more space. 5/2 divided by 7/8. Remember that fraction bar means divide. And then I want to divide by 7/8. So 7/8 divided by 7/8, I do keep change flip. And then that means I'm going to multiply by 8/7. This is going to give me my denominator of 1, or my bottom number is going to be 1. And then I'm going to also multiply my top number by 8/7. Now, before I go any further, I can multiply across, but I also am seeing that I can simplify here. Before I even start to multiply, I see that I have a factor of 2 down here, and I have 8, which also has 2 as a factor. So I can divide both of those by 2, which turns this into a 1, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. That makes it a little bit easier on me when I multiply, because then I'm not dealing with as big of numbers. So now I'm going to multiply 5 times 4 to get 20, and 1 times 7 to get 7. Now, that means I have 27 over 1. So that's 27 gallons per 1 bucket. But I'm not done here because I still need to make sure that I change this improper fraction back to a mixed number. So again, I'm going to divide, and I'm just going to do that out here where I have more space. I want to see how many times 7 is going to go into 20. I know that it goes in 2 times. 2 times 7 is 14. I'm going to subtract, and I have a remainder of 6, which means this mixed number, this 27th, is actually going to be 2 6/7 gallons per bucket. And that is going to be my answer. Okay. And let's take a look at this last problem. We'll do this together. Greg uses 1 2/3 gallon of gas by traveling 46 1/4 miles. How far could he go on a single gallon of gas? Okay, so we don't have any of those keywords, that per, each, over, but we want to look for other things that might mean one, okay? And in this problem, single, so single gallon, is telling us one, right? Single gallon means 1 gallon. So when I'm looking at my units here, that means I want to put my miles on top and my gallons on the bottom. So I'm going to write that first. I'm going to write miles over gallons. And I'll abbreviate that next time. So I want to look which unit or which number goes with miles. That's going to be 46 1/4 over 1 2/3. Okay, now this time I've got two mixed numbers. So the first thing I need to do is change these mixed numbers into improper fractions. So I'm going to start with, in both of these, we're going to do bottom times whole plus the top, or the check mark, whichever one works for you. And we're going to multiply and then add our numerator. So 1 times 3 is 3 plus 2 is 5. So this is actually going to be 5/3 on the bottom. And then we're going to do 46 times 4. Now, I don't know that off the top of my head, so I'm actually going to multiply that out here. So I'm going to do 46 times 4. I don't know what that is off the top of my head, so I'm going to work it out. So if we look here, 6 times 4 is 24. Carry my 2. 4 times 4 is 16, plus 2 is 184. Now, that's going to be 46 times 4, and then I want to make sure I add my 1. I don't want to forget to add the 1. So now my top number is going to be 185 fourths. And that is going to be divided by 5/3. So I'm going to rewrite that down here just so I have some more space. And these, again, miles over gallons. So I have 185 fourths miles over 5/3 gallons. I'm just going to put a G. So again, I need to go ahead and divide, right? 185 fourths divided by 5/3. Again, remember when I'm dividing by 5/3, I do keep, change, flip. So I'm actually going to multiply by 3/5. So when I do this, I get my bottom number is going to be 1 because 5/3 times 3/5 is going to be 15 over 5, which reduces to 1. And then I need to do 185 fourths times 3/5. Now, these are some bigger numbers, and it's going to help me out if I simplify first. So I want to look at my factors. I know that 185 can be divided by 5, and so can 5. So I'm going to do 5 divided by 5 is 1, and I'm going to do 185 divided by 5. I'm going to do that way over here just so I have more space, but I'm going to just do long division to figure this out. 5 goes into 18 3 times. When we subtract, we have 3. We bring down our 5, and 5 goes into 35 7 times. So this is going to simplify to 37. So now what I'm looking at is 37 times 3. And when I multiply 37 times 3, again, I don't know that off the top of my head, so 7 times 3 is just 21. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 2 is 11. So I get 111. And then when I multiply 4 times 1, I just get 4. So I have 111 fourths over 1. Now again, I have an improper fraction. So I'm going to go ahead and close my video for a second so I have more space. I have 111 fourths that I want to change into a mixed number. So again, I'm going to have to do some division here. I'm going to divide 111 divided by 4, and I'm going to just do my long division. 4 goes into 11 2 times. I subtract, I have 3. I bring down my 1. 4 goes into 31, 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28, and then when I subtract, I'm left with a remainder of 3. So what this is telling me is I have 27, and then remember my remainder is my numerator, so 3/4 miles per, in this case, this is going to be gallons, per 1 gallon. So 27 3/4 miles per gallon. I know this was a lot of work, a lot of converting between improper fractions and mixed numbers, kind of working back and forth, but hopefully you were able to follow along the notes okay. I tried to color code down here a little bit just so the color coding could help you know what went with what problem. If you have any questions, by all means, raise your hand, ask your teacher, go back, pause, rewind, whatever you need to do with the video to make sure that you understand what we're doing here. Otherwise, we'll be moving on to the next activity. So check in with your teacher, make sure you've got everything you need to do with the notes.